Hi guys, it's Chris speaking. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about something a little bit uncomfortable, and that is ending a long-term relationship. I was in my last relationship for 8 years when I finally stood my ground and said enough was enough, and I ended it. There's a number of reasons why people might end a long-term relationship, and most of them aren't great for one party or both parties. In terms of mine, it was emotional manipulation and bullying. That's not the story that she'll be telling her friends, but it's what was happening to me, and I finally had enough and got out of it. I'd been told for years by multiple sources, different friends, to the point, my sister even talked to me about it once, although they're a little bit quieter out of respect, this person that I chose to be with. I was told that I wasn't being treated very well, and I made excuses for shitty behaviour, especially in the last couple of years where it got quite bad. I went through a period, or I guess the last 2 years of this relationship with this person. I went through a pattern of every few months I would break down in front of my best friend, and I would tell him that I was unhappy and it wasn't working, and list out a bunch of reasons why it wasn't working. And then he would turn it back on me and say, yes, these things aren't good enough and this is why it isn't working. And all of a sudden I started making excuses for my ex. It wasn't healthy, but I wasn't seeing it. And I stayed in the relationship so long for a few reasons. One being guilt, that we'd been together for so long, and I grew up with this person. I didn't want to have to start all over again, but the main one was fear. I worried about what their reaction would be. I was told time and time again that no one else would put up with my shit, and that was drilled into me that I would never find someone else because I was this awful person, and that I was being done a favour by being in this relationship and having this person in my life. There were a lot of warning signs that I saw and that I ignored. There was always something on the cards, like travel or birthdays, which made it difficult to end the relationship. At least for me, I was making excuses for her, I was making excuses for myself, and it wasn't until that sort of last week of the relationship where I decided that no, I was done. I think it took me a long time to realise that any sort of emotional manipulation was happening to me. And even when I realised that, because I was making the excuses, I wasn't ready to end it. That fear was pretty powerful. I didn't want to end it because I didn't want to be screamed at. I didn't want things to be thrown at me. Not that she was violent towards me, but it was still a fear that it would go that way. The thing is, if you know someone in this situation, no one can really tell someone else when it's time to end a relationship. All you can do is really be there and offer your support during those times. I lost a lot of friends, or lose is the wrong word because I have regained some of them now, but I stopped talking to a lot of people because this other person had made me feel uncomfortable being around my friends. Like, I wasn't allowed to have them. Any friends I did have, they got picked apart to a point where I didn't want them to get bullied and crap thrown on them, so I just stopped talking to them. Or when I was with other people, I was on my phone texting my ex constantly. If I didn't, I felt fear. If I didn't do that, I would go home and then be torn out. I used to get things like, oh, well, you'd rather spend time with this person than spend time with me, or, well, maybe you're cheating on me with this person, when it wasn't the case at all. But when I was out with other people, I was constantly glued to my phone. One of the things, once I started building up friendships again, that was said to me was, oh, you haven't touched your phone in the last couple of hours after that relationship had ended. And it was really refreshing to not sort of have that. But it was also a weird moment of realising that that's not actually normal, that you don't have to be glued to the hip or talking to your significant other all day, every day. I got called useless a lot, and that word wasn't just used against me, it was used against many people in her life. So if something wasn't done to what she thought was the best of her ability or what she expected, that person was useless. I heard it in terms of me, I heard it in terms of her family, her friends, the public. Like, anyone could have been useless to her. It wasn't just me that this was happening to. It was her family and her friends. She wanted to dictate everyone's life and what they should and they shouldn't be doing. She used to call her sister a slut to me because she was expressing sexual freedom and that wasn't appropriate. So therefore, she wasn't good enough and she was a slut and she was going to get all sorts of sexually transmitted diseases and that would be her life. And it wasn't my ex's problem, it was hers. She would insult her friends if they, did anything positive. She had a gay friend who got a boyfriend and that somehow got turned back on him as being an insult. And we all just sort of sat there and laughed it off and because she was the bitchy friend, when in truth she was just a bully and none of us had the guts to stand up to her. I, in the relationship, was scared to have opinions because my opinions were wrong or they were turned back on me. If we had a fight, I did tell her quite a few times, especially in that last 2-year period, that I was unhappy and reasons that I was unhappy. But somehow they were turned around and were my fault. One thing I can remember is talking to her about wanting more affection because we didn't have any. We would go days without kissing or hugging. We had a tenuous friendship. And I brought that up and she turned around and said, "Oh, you're such a big baby. You don't need that." I remember talking to her about wanting her to make an effort a little bit more because I had moved out of my parents' house and she was still in her parents' house. And where I had moved was about a 25-minute drive. And she reminded me that when I said I was moving out to this location, that she would never visit me because it was too far and it was my fault for moving out there. So when we'd have these arguments and I would say that I wasn't happy, things like that would get turned around if she did make the effort to visit me. I remember telling her once when I was in this other property, saying, "Oh, I wish you'd make a little bit more effort." She said, "Oh, I'm here, aren't I?" Because she'd made one drive to that property. And I lived there for 2.5 years and I think she may have visited me about a dozen times where I was, yet I would drive to her house 3 to 4 times a week. So it took me a little while. It's now been about 14 to 16 months since that relationship has ended. I'm engaged to a wonderful woman now, and I'm a lot happier, but it's taken a little bit of time to, I guess, process what was happening in that last relationship, and I've developed and have gone to therapy for relationship PTSD, which I would not have believed was a thing 2 years ago because I was told I was a big baby. But it is a thing, and there's, there are signs of it, and, I've brought some not so positive repercussions of that past relationship into this new relationship, which I need to work on to make sure that I'm not bullying my current partner. One of them is being hypercritical. And there's a couple of links that I'll put below. One is from reachout.com, which basically is an article explaining signs of relationship abuse and not so much what you can do, but just being aware. And another one is to do with relationship PTSD, because it is a real thing, and sort of knowing, again, the signs and stuff that may come across later into your relationship. I was sent a list of emotionally manipulative behaviours from my best friend when I was in the relationship, and he sent it to me more than once, and I would read it, and I knew that it was happening, but I wasn't ready to see it. So I've got one on Reach Out at the moment, and I'm just going to go through a couple of them. I'm not going to put them on the screen or anything, you don't need to read them, but a couple of things that happened to me in my past relationship one was possessiveness. So they try to control where you go, who you see, and get angry if you don't do what they say. Like I said, I would go out with friends and I would have to be on my phone constantly, or I would get things like, "You prefer to be with this person than with me." Also flows on to jealousy. They accuse you being unfaithful or flirting, and they isolate you from your family or friends, often by behaving rudely to them. This wasn't so much my family. My ex did make an effort to come to the things that I do with my family, but it definitely happened in terms of my friends, and I have had to build most of my friendships back up. So throughout 8 years, I maybe kept one or two friends, one being my best friend, but the rest of them sort of fell by the wayside, even to the point where I wasn't going out after work because I was scared of the repercussions of coming home and being accused of things. The biggest one that happened to me was put downs. They put you down either publicly or privately by attacking your intelligence, looks, mental health, and capabilities. I got that my breath stank constantly. If it didn't, maybe she would kiss me more. I got that I was an ugly crier, so I shouldn't cry or show emotion because that didn't make me look good. I came back from a cruise when we were a couple of years into the relationship and I got told to hit the gym. It wasn't stuff that was done privately. These things were said publicly in front of people. I was identifying as a female at the time, and I have a very small chest, which is a blessing now, but she used to shame me for that, like, oh, you basically have a child's chest. Things like that. There wasn't so much as threatening, not in a physical sense anyway, but that is one of the things, and physical and sexual violence, which wasn't really an issue either. I used to tell myself that things will get better. After these conversations, like I said, there was a pattern. Every 3 months I would have a talk with her and it would be turned back on me, and somehow I would end up apologising for even having the emotion in the first place and wanting the conversation and agreeing with her that it had gotten better. The main one was, I have made an effort, I'm here, aren't I? And I would go, oh, I guess that you are here, so that was an effort that's been made on your part. And then being convinced that it was my fault. And I was scared to leave. Not of violence, but just scared of the outburst and not being able to find anyone else because of those messages that were really drilled into my head during that time. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I was a saint in that relationship. I wasn't. I craved affection more than anything, and I had an emotional, bordering physical affair with my best friend. I met my now fiancé and started a dangerous, flirtatious friendship towards the end of the relationship with my ex, and that ended, and I entered the new relationship very quickly. So, like I said, I wasn't a saint, but there were things that I was looking for and reaching out for that I just wasn't getting where I was. I moved out with my ex, knowing that it wouldn't fix it. I tried, and I'd convinced myself that it got better, but I ended it 3 months after moving out with this person. So that was pretty shitty to do, because she then had to move out. The other thing I wanted to talk about, in case anyone is watching this and has seen someone go through it, a lot of my family, my friends watch this, so I am sorry if I let that friendship fall by the wayside, and hopefully you're one of the people that I've picked it back up again. Anyway, that's it from me. I had a crappy relationship, as I'm sure a lot of people have gone through, and it doesn't end in the best way. Sometimes it takes you a couple of years to get to the realization that it is really over. For me, I don't think my ex-partner and I loved each other for years, and I should have ended it sooner. I was accused of stealing her youth when I ended it, so there was a lot of guilt that surrounded that. But you do what you have to do. I'm glad that I got to the point where I was able to say, no, enough was enough, and get out of that situation. And since then have become who I'm meant to be. And I am medically transitioning to physically become that person as well as mentally. And it has been the most eye-opening 14 to 16 months, however long it's been, that I've had. And I wouldn't change the experience because it's made me who I am. That's enough rambling from me. If you made it to the end, thank you. If you are one of those friends, I'm sorry, and I hope that we can rebuild that friendship. I'll catch you next time. Okay, bye. Yay, we're done.